안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon. As I've been introduced, I am Chung Young-pyung, the moderator for this session. It's been a long day of learning for all of us. It's already 3, and so it's really time for a nap. It would be great if we could all lie in bed listening to this session. The third session, which I will be moderating, will be a great session. Of course, we had great sessions throughout the day, but the presentations that we will have for session 3 will cover Myanmar, Laos, and Sri Lanka, and it will be presented by those who were actually there on site to conduct the projects. And they will be able to share with us the results and success factors of their projects. They were very observant in the local sites, and this will be a great presentation or a great series of presentations for those who are interested in applying 새마을 운동 to the local countries. Are you interested in applying 새마을 운동 to your own countries? If you are, then I believe that session 3 will be very useful to all of you. We have 3 presenters, and we are about 15 minutes behind schedule. So I will not ask the presenters to introduce themselves, but rather jump into their presentations right away for about 15 to 20 minutes. So please make sure that you keep your presentations short, and we would like to ask the presenters to speak within 5 minutes. So only ask core questions, only the core questions. That will leave us time for questions from the floor. This topic is a topic where we need to absolutely receive questions from the floor. So let's hope that everyone keeps within their allocated time. So let's go right into the presentations. The first presenter today is Director General Moon Sang-won of KOICA. He is in charge of the Department of Southeast Asia at KOICA. We give you 20 minutes.
안녕하십니까. 소개받은
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As introduced, I am Moon Sang-won, who is the Director General of the Department of Southeast Asia 1 as well as 2. So actually, I am in charge of the whole Southeast Asia department in KOICA. So now I would like to tell you about the 새마을 운동 in the eyes of the international community, especially in Myanmar, that I have experienced for about 5 years. And then also I would like to tell you about how it was successful. Now, as you can see, now it says in Korean, the Rural Village Development Project, but then it essentially means 새마을 운동. Now, as you can see here, this is the map of the country, Myanmar. Now, there are 15 states in Myanmar, and of them, 10. So, in 10 provinces, the project occurred. And it's not just in 1 or 2 demonstration regions, but then again, it was in 10 regions across Myanmar, across 110 villages. So thanks to this, we were able to see, because we had planned for the 새마을 운동 to be nationwide program across Myanmar. The project implementers were Myanmar Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Irrigation, and of them, the Department of Agriculture was the leading player, and that is because they are the ones who are responsible for the rural areas, and they also had the nationwide network, and that is why it was the Department of Agriculture under the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Irrigation that undertook the project. And then also from Korea there was KOICA, as well as the Korea Rural Community Corporation, 새마을운동 Center, and Hangyeong National University. Now let me first tell you about the project organization. First, we came up with the preparation of the master plan, then followed by the training on the 새마을운동 leaders as well as the government officials. So we established the Rural Development Training Center, and those who have been trained here, in other words, the village leaders and the government officials, then we undertook the program in 110 pilot villages for 3 years, for 5 years, and then we then evaluated the outcome of the project, then came up with the plan that would best fit the development of the villages in Myanmar. Now, as you can see here, the most important element of the 새마을운동 again is the training and education of the village members and the civil servants, because that was also the key success factor in Korea for the Korean 새마을운동. Now, in this case, not to provide the training in Korea, but then to be more localized, to be more customized, and actually, the next presenter, President Jung Gap-jin, will also talk more about this. But then, so he undertook this training, and then, so we were also able to see people transforming through this leadership training. So once again, we were able to see the importance of the training for the leaders as well as the civil servants. So there are total 80 courses. 526 trainees have gone through this, and even today the training continues. Now the project overview, and next is about the project organization system. Now, another thing that was important was about the nationwide organization. So pan-government and nationwide organization is also very important. So similarly to Korea in the 1970s, there was also the project management committee at the central government level. And then at each region, there was the project implementation committee. And then under each township, there was also the project implementation committee. And then now at each village, the village development committee was created to create a nationwide organization to oversee and implement the project. And as I mentioned earlier, so under the village, there are the village development committee. So there were total 110 such committees. And then also at each village, they picked the village leader. And also we have also come up with the requirement that the auditor shall be a female leader so that there would be representation by both men and women. And then also for the projects, you can see that there are largely 3 types: capacity building, living environment improvement, and income growth. And then under each subcommittee, they would also undertake its own tasks. Now this is the village development committee members. And now this, I believe, was still in the first year. So this is about how the development committee members got together. So you see they came together very often, almost on a every other week basis to discuss programs and projects for the village development. And next is about the capacity building. So for example, cleaning the neighborhood, marketing, and also production techniques training. So these were all held at the village level. And also what is important, is now so every year whenever we decided on the projects that are important for the village, then all the villagers would get together to vote on it. And again, this is also very similar to what happened in Korea under the 새마을운동 in 1970s. And next is the Living Environment Improvement Project. So as you can see, the villagers provided their labor in kind, and by participating in this task, they were able to make improvement in their own village. So all the decisions were made solely by the villagers without outsiders' intervention. And you'll also see later on that even the evaluation was done by the villagers as well. So you can see that this was very much a villager-led program. Next is the Income Increase Project. Now, Myanmar is a country with one of the highest levels of trust, which is a very important social capital. So then we also came up with the microfinance program, and 4 years later, after the project was completed, we also looked at the microfinance status, and we could see that there was not a single case of delinquency. In other words, the repayment was 100%. And I believe that that was made possible thanks to the very high social capital, in other words, a very high level of trust. And also for the community vault. So the community vault, which provided the microfinance, as a result of this, they were able to increase their capital by 30%. And based on this funding, they are still providing financing to the village tasks. Now, as you can see, at the end of every month, then they would also get together to conduct evaluation of each task. So for the 110 villages, so from number 1 to number 110, they would also put them in ranking. And then the top 30%, median 30%, and the bottom 30% were categorized to be subject to incentives for the next year. So grade A villages would receive double, and then grade B would receive 50% more. So thanks to such incentives and competition, they were further motivated to successfully implement the project. Again, similarly to what happened in Korea in 1970s. Then next are the project results. As you can see, the total project budget, 40.8% of the total budget came from the villagers' donations. And then also from KOICA, what they got from the donors from KOICA was only about 60%. So as you would know, Myanmar is one of the least developed countries in the world, but then still, for the rural development, the villagers would provide their own labor. They would also let others use their land, and also made donations to the village vault. And as a result, you can see that about 40% of the project budget actually came from the villagers' donations. And then next was the project result from the capacity building programs. And there were about 38 times on average, 38 times of village meetings per village. And then the village assembly was attended by an average of 1,276 members of the village. And then the training was conducted 7 times. And then also there were 310 who would take trips to new, more developed villages. And then also we did not conduct publicity efforts. It was the villagers who did it on their own. And then also the cleaning efforts were also made almost at the rate of twice a month. And then next was about the living environment improvement project. So you can see that on average, there was about 1,978 meters length of the road that was paved on average for each village. And then in terms of the water supply pipes, then about 300, close to 350 meters of water pipes were established. And then also electric poles, 15 and 800 meters of electric transmission lines. And then 54 households were receiving power. And then clinics, close to 0.1, and then education facilities 0.35, and town meeting halls 1.25, and other public facilities were newly created on average by 0.38. And then also bridges and other facilities, and also for the first time in Myanmar, they also had separated collection of garbage for recycling purposes, and so for that purpose 14 facilities were installed. And you can see that in many of the villages they would undertake the less challenging projects first to build up confidence that yes, we can do it, just like in Korea, and then later on they would tackle more challenging projects. So as a result, in 2019, when the project was nearing the completion, so of course now the situation is not good for her, but then anyway, so the national advisor Aung San Suu Kyi, now she had a talk with the villagers, and then now one farmer raised his hand, and then he was saying that now the village next door, now they were doing the 새마을 운동 and they are much better off thanks to it. I hope that we can also do the same in my village. So that was a suggestion, in fact. And then so she gave the instruction to the Minister of Agriculture sitting next to her and instructed that the 새마을 운동 be rolled out across the nation. So then in 2020, you see that there were also more projects that were undertaken across the nation with the village's own budget. And then also I talked about the town or the village vault project. And even after the project was completed, the Myanmar government came up with an implementation decree to allow the village vault to stay so that it can continue to be used for the purpose of rural development. So they now had the legal basis to keep using the village funds. And then it was announced that they will try to build on the outcomes of the Myanmar Rural Community Development Project to develop all areas of Myanmar, including the rural areas. And also, many different companies and municipalities of Korea also took part in the Myanmar Rural Development Program. So, for example, POSCO Daewoo, well-known company in Korea, and now they are developing the gas field in the country. And now, in order to return what they are making, they are also supporting village development projects in 5 villages in the state of Rakhine. So then, as a result of this, 16 more villages have been added to the initial 100. And you can see that other companies as well as municipalities are engaging in such CSR activities. And also at the end, SK Telecom. So they are also providing cook stove supply to Myanmar. So providing improved cook stove. And then now SK Telecom, by doing so, can also earn emission credits. And this is what I had explained earlier, the POSCO International CSR program. And then the next one is SK Group's Improved Cook Stove Supply Project. As a result of this, about close to 70 billion won in budget, and in the end they got benefits of about 150 billion won. So I saw that, yes, a very good return on their investment. Anyway, so thanks to the project, then many of the women in the village no longer had to suffer from the smoke coming out when cooking. So this was also very good for health promotion purposes as well. Next is the MG project, Myanmar Community Credit Cooperative. So this is in relation to what I mentioned earlier about the village fund. So now there are 35 community credit cooperatives that have been established, and among them, so they are all included, so they are all among the 100 villages where this Semaurundong is being undertaken. Now then, for some evaluation. Now we were able to establish the model of the development that was customized for Myanmar, and as a result of this, they were able to further boost the social capital, which is trust among the villagers, which is already very solid. And then village environment and income improved, and capacity building for sustainability among villagers and civil service via training systems were also further strengthened. Then some of the success factors. Now this project was able to accurately reflect the success factors of the Korean Semaurundong in the 1970s. So for example, training and education for the Semaur leaders as well as the civil servants, and then also training of the leaders and incentives and competition. So the strengths of the Semaurundong were very well reflected. And then also the village situation was similar between Myanmar then with the Korean situation. So this was also one important success factor. So now then, in conclusion, so this was not an exact transplantation of Semaurundong model from Korea to another country. What is important is to make sure that this can be customized for the specificities of the country. We have to consider the local circumstances, economic, political, and so forth. Then also the success factors of the Semaurundong in the 1970s should be well incorporated into the business plan. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for your presentation, which highlighted only the key points. So I had also visited Africa over the summer, and I could sense the very strong enthusiasm to introduce Semaurundong. So I'm sure that many of you are from Africa and also Southeast Asia. But Semaurundong is not something that's easy. I mean, it's not just to be supported. It's not just to receive the benefits. But then for the Semaurundong, there are principles. And so they were set up by President Park, and it was that the villagers have to lead the way. And then also elements of competition. So those who are doing well would receive more. So through such competition, there would be more motivation. And then the government or the president would be the control tower. And so the executive branch, the administration, also held meetings about Semaurundong. So you need to have that kind of commitment and interest and enthusiasm So it's not something they can learn in the course of a few days by coming to Korea. So again, it's going to be a big challenge. So what Mr. Moon has mentioned, so I hope that you can also take this back with you and also pour into this a bit more. So I also read through the entire report, and I can see that yes, from the very beginning until the end, so there are all the details included. So it's a very impeccably prepared report.
We will now go on to Director Chung Gap-jin of the Global 새마을 운동 Research Institute. He actually was in charge of the actual work in Laos, and he is a well-known expert who has many publications under his name. Following Director Moon Sang-won's presentation, we will now hear from Director Chung.
네, 방금 소개받은 정답.
As have been introduced, I am Chung Gap-jin. This session covers 새마을 운동 from the perspective of international cooperation, and that is to open more advanced 새마을 ODA. So I would like to take this opportunity to take a look at a case study of a project that we conducted in Laos. From 2002, 새마을 운동 was added as a demonstration project to Laos. Up until now, about 6 organizations have attempted to apply 새마을 projects. The first organization was ESCOP, the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. 새마을 project was included for UN ESCOP in Laos along with Cambodia so that we can add value to the rural areas. And then the 새마을 운동 Center started in 2009, and we started with 2 demonstration villages, and that has been expanded to 11. The 새마을 Foundation started in 2016, and a total of 5 villages have been added to the list. The Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry and Fisheries are also conducting 새마을 운동 demonstration projects. The largest scale was conducted by KOICA. We have just heard from Director Moon Sang-won on the Myanmar example conducted by KOICA. Laos was included in one of the 5 countries that KOICA worked with a budget of 15 million won. And based on this project, we are now looking forward to the 2nd and 3rd Rural Development Plan in Laos. So, we do not call these rural development projects 새마을 운동, but it's based on the 새마을 운동 projects that we have already conducted. For the 2nd and 3rd round of projects, we are participating in the monitoring of the results, and so it will be an opportunity for us to see how 새마을 운동 is impacting this country. Well, the project by KOICA has already been presented, and the results have been quite outstanding in Laos as well. So I would like to take a look at the example of the 새마을 Foundation and the 새마을 운동 Center so that we can share the results as well as the limitations. And let's take a look at what are some of the possible responses. The Korea 새마을운동 Center conducted this project. So I would like to talk about three different things: the promotion framework, the strategy, as well as the feedback from the local residents. If we take a look at the promotion framework, the Laibans, or the village heads, served as the 새마을 leader because Laos has a socialist social network, and so they do have an existing network of village heads called Laibans. And there's also the operation of crop groups tailored to specific crops that the villages cultivate. For about 20 years, we have seen Korean residents living in this area, and so we have asked that person to become the cooperation officer. The central government or the local government of Laos, of course, they do provide us with their support, but we do not go through these governments, but rather the Korean cooperation officer who lives locally in Laos conducts the projects with the villages directly. We usually have a 5-year plan for projects, but the 새마을 운동 Center receives budget from the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, and so the budget is quite modest, so we can only invest about 20 to 30 million won per village per year. 새마을 운동 always focuses on environmental improvements in the beginning so that we can promote the 새마을 spirit and raise awareness. We also work through college student volunteer groups. 새마을 운동 Center has branches across Korea, and so these branches can then bring in volunteers so that we can visit different cities. And even if the project is completed, the village is designated as a management village for 2 to 3 subsequent years. Let's take a look at some of our major business results. In 2013, there was a great achievement. The president of Laos visited Hasai, which was a successful village, and it was officially recognized as a model village. And so the president of Laos himself visited this village, showing the outstanding achievement. This raised awareness and interest within the Laos government, and the income per household was about $400 in 2009 when we first started the 새마을 movement. But in just 4 years, the income per household increased by 6-fold to $2,500 in 2013. We had our projects in the Yecheon province up until 2020, but we have added 3 more villages in the Buri Kamsai state, and you can see that we continue to expand our projects across Laos. 새마을 운동 Center conducts various projects, but there are 2 focuses. For the environmental improvement initiatives, we pave roads. We had a total of 36 projects to pave village roads. That actually led to a high satisfaction level amongst the residents. In Southeast Asia, there is a long rainy season, and so road pavements are very important. And we also try to establish rain shelters, especially during the rainy season. Vegetable prices are not competitive, and so rain shelters were very much welcomed by the villages. So we have accumulated know-how throughout the last decade, and so it seems that the projects are becoming stable, but it seems that we are overly focused on these 2 projects. But we have added education projects. We actually provided training to 768 people by inviting them to Korea. So we believe that the village leaders, if they actually see the development of Korea for themselves, we believe that it will motivate the development of the rural communities. Recently, we have strengthened on-site training. In particular, through KOICA, we are utilizing the rural development training centers that they have established in Laos. The 11 projects that we have conducted are mostly focused on environmental improvement, increasing income, and also building capacity, as you see on the screen. Let's take a look at the assessment as well as the resident feedback concerning the projects by the 새마을 운동 Center. Thanks to selection and concentration, we were able to have visible results, and we were also able to apply the similar projects to new villages. We were also able to conduct road paving projects led by residents. Well, for all 새마을 운동 projects, it's based on the understanding that it has to be led by the residents. And so that is actually leading to a spirit of cooperation. Building pilot farms and livestock projects, the results were quite modest. Greenhouse farming actually led to great satisfaction from the residents. And so in Laos, we do believe that we need to build more greenhouses for vegetable farming. We don't have the accurate figures for the net profit, but in Korea, each greenhouse would cover about 20,000 pyong, and this would actually lead to a net profit of about $1,000 per year per household. We also worked with local governments and also student volunteers from universities, and they would visit the villages twice a year. And so that would lead to building friendship between the people of Laos and the people of Korea. And we are able to deliver the message that Korea was also able to use 새마을 운동 to grow into the wealthy nation that it is today. Because we started our projects in 2009, we have already laid down the foundation for the global 새마을 운동 in Laos. Because the project sizes are smaller, it could not have an impact on the overall village. And the projects were relatively small scale, and there was not a continuous series of projects. And so that actually was limited in winning the interest and voluntary participation of the residents. So the projects need to be well connected, but it seems that there are only ad hoc projects that are ongoing. And according to research locally, there are insufficient record keeping, and record keeping is very important for assessment. And from the very beginning, we did not incorporate ODA norms or use PDM. So that was something that was insufficient on the part of the 새마을 운동 Center. Next, let's go on to projects by the 새마을 Foundation. 새마을 Foundation jumped into this market later than other entities, but it's very substantial and very stable. So we do have people dispatched locally to lead projects. In particular, we have youth volunteers and also experts that support projects. From the initial stages, We worked with the cities in Laos as well as the central governments. And so compared to the 새마을 Undong Center, the 새마을 Foundation is maintaining great relations with the local and central government. Each village is developing a 새마을 Development Committee. In particular, the 새마을 Cooperative is the goal for each crop group to reach. So 새마을 Cooperative currently has been registered at the government, and it consists of different crop groups. We have 5-year cycles, and the focus is income creation. That is a unique characteristic of the projects by the 새마을 Foundation. We also provide education and training to raise awareness and also to provide education on agricultural technology. The profits from the cooperatives have been accumulated to cover the operating cost of crop groups, and 10% has been allocated for the villages, so they will be reinvested into the village development. These are the major projects. The first project started in 2016, and this project was in the areas where there's a rice belt. And so what they needed was rice drying facilities for rice production. And so according to the local needs, we built rice drying facilities, and currently 17 villages are benefiting from this facility. And this facility is still operated very well. It's a model case for ODA. With the cooperation of KOICA, we have been able to work with Myeongji University to enable local farms to cultivate asparagus, which is a high-income crop. Along with the city government, we have joint monitoring projects. We have also extended training programs to individuals in Laos, and we have been able to invite 192 leaders from Laos to Korea. Here you can see the summary of different projects. There are some similarities between these projects from village to village, but here are the major characteristics. Please refer to your proceedings for the details. Now let's take a look at the assessment and residents' feedback. Because these projects were led by the local residents, that was why these projects were so successful. The agricultural policies of Laos was taken into consideration through communication with city government. According to the director of the city's Department for Agriculture and Forestry, the 새마을 pilot project aligns with the Samsang policy, focusing on village-centered execution strategy that strongly emphasizes active involvement and cooperation of the residents at the local level. We had projects focused on the construction of village halls and also the paving of village roads. We also provided rain shelters, just like the 새마을 Undong Center projects. These projects are agricultural technologies that are very suitable for the local environment. Concerning the cooperatives, because of the cooperatives and the accumulation of a part of the income, this will then be invested for the future of the villages. And what is also very unique is that the 새마을 Foundation always provides tractors or other farming machinery that is absolutely necessary for the villages, and this then belongs to the cooperatives, which means that the cooperatives can manage these facilities and machinery and at the same time rent out these machinery for profit. But despite so, the We did come up with a successful for-profit model, but it doesn't seem that the benefit is being enjoyed by all of the villagers because of the lack of the trickle-down effect. I talked about two different examples, and overall, there are some key achievements and limitations that I can share with you. So, both the 새마을 운동 Center and 새마을 Foundation were connected directly with the villages. The efficiency was very high, and the local government conducted policy briefing sessions for local organization heads. So within the Biantian city, they gathered the heads of counties and village leaders and affiliated organizations to provide a briefing on the success of 새마을 운동 pilot projects. And so you can see that the local government thinks very highly of these projects. We have also seen that there has been a raising of awareness amongst the people, and we have also seen more women participation. In particular, rain shelters are being used by women, and we believe that greenhouses and rain shelters were most successful in raising gender equality. But having said that, there are two limitations that I would like to mention. The projects were very successful, but increasing the residents' perceived average income is still very limited. And 새마을 운동 uses the word 운동, which is movement, which means that it continues. Instead of initiatives, we use the word 운동, or movement. And so we see that sometimes there is limited interest in non-budgetary initiatives, but there are more activities for cleaning, saving, reading, and education. But because there is limited interest in non-budgetary initiatives, some people mistake 새마을 운동 as outside support and just financial support. And so I think this is a limitation that we need to overcome. So through the Laos example, what are some of the countermeasures for future ODA? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that we ensure sustainability of business results and boost resident participation. So how are we going to bring about voluntary resident participation? For example, we can have a common village fund or have a 새마을 금고 established locally. We also need to provide systematic training for local leaders. We need to strengthen local leaders, and we need to utilize the Korea-Laos Rural Development Training Institute. And we need to make sure that we align with the Laos government's rural development policy. So in conclusion, we should not remain in villages, but we need to strengthen partnerships with the central government through both the 새마을 운동 Center and 새마을 Foundation. And currently, there are lack of collaboration between the two organizations, which leads to a fragmentation of the projects. The 새마을 운동 Center needs to work with the Korea-Laos Rural Development Training Institute, which is not moving forward. And that would be a great way to divide roles with the 새마을 Foundation. Thank you very much.
수고했습니다.
Thank you very much.
좋은 발표 감사드립니다.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm sorry that we were not able to give you more time, but we need to make sure that we leave time for others. In Laos, KOICA is working with 100 villages with the 새마을 운동 Center. So we need to have well-planned approaches in order to have good results. For Myanmar, it's very difficult because of the political unrest. And Dr. Chung talked about 5 villages in Laos that he worked with. And he gave us the achievements and limitations. But now we have to go on to Sri Lanka.
Sure, yeah.
Please go ahead and please be brief. Thank you. So I am Choi Sung-woo, director of the Semal Foundation Sri Lanka office. So I was there at the height of COVID-19 and have been there since then. So now it would be an honor for my family for me to have been invited here at this important forum. Now, when I was first invited to this forum as a speaker, I felt a bit burdensome, and then I looked at the program and looked at the other speakers. I thought that the sky was falling. But still, so I came to Korea with a heavy heart for the first time in my life. So then I hope that I can finish my presentation successfully so that I can go back to Sri Lanka with a lighter heart. Now then, let me first talk about the Sri Lanka, the Janasabya Samruddhi, and so the poverty eradication programs in Sri Lanka. And then I would just like to highlight some of the differences between the Semaul Undong and the local programs. Now, for the Semaul Undong is the kind of project where there is collaboration among the government and the local leaders as well as the other stakeholders to create value. And then in terms of the local programs, then of course I am not privy to all the details, but then as far as I understand, it seems as if it was more about wealth transfer or better distribution of wealth within Sri Lanka. Now then, regarding the Sri Lanka Semal project, now let me explain to you about the Semal demonstration village development to metropolitanize Semal village and national transformation. So then, these are the contents. I would like to tell you about the process of such transfer and then discuss a bit about the future plan. Now, this is from 2015. So our office was registered in 2015. Now, the project started in 2014, but I would like to skip this page. And now about the demonstration villages. Now, creating the demonstration villages. Now, earlier there was a description about how many provinces and also how many villages. So yes, there are like over 4,000 villages. And then now we undertook the programs in some of these villages, and even after the program has been completed, the villagers continue on their own. And now these are the metropolitanized semi-village development. So we have conducted the metropolitanized demonstration village development in areas with over 10,000. So before then, so we have signed the MOU with the Sabarakamuwa province, and then now we also have the MOU with the Ministry of Women and Child Affairs. So together with a region that is very famous for its tea farm. And also we see that it is also going to be undertaken in Kegol province as well, moving on from the small village to larger villages and also larger areas. So now then, this is the background to the project. So now this, you see that this has been the transition in the national programs ever since I got there. And so of course it was not my decision, but then you can see that these were the changes that took place in Sri Lanka. And of course, the tourism industry was an important industry for Sri Lanka, but then tourism collapsed, and then also there was the economic crisis in the country, and also there was depreciation of the currency by half, and also there was the bankruptcy of the country, and also no gas. So I mean, our cars were not able to move around either. And then the protesters occupied the president's house. President stepped down, a new president was elected. Usually it's the popular election, but then in this case, the parliament elected the president. Now, together with the Sabaragamuwa region and the foundation, we signed an MOU. And then, since then, the MOU expired, and then also the situation also changed, meaning that before 2022, it was hard to implement the project for various reasons. So we even considered withdrawing the office. But then now from the foundation, the leader and also from the region and also, so they came to Sri Lanka to see whether we should continue or not. And then they met with the Prime Minister and also met with the Speaker of the Parliament to discuss the project in Sri Lanka. So the Sri Lanka leadership, now they knew about the Semaul Undong vaguely, that it was started by President Park Chung-hee, and this is a successful model of rural development in Korea. But then now they, of course, were not aware of all the details about the Semaul Undong. But then now, at each meeting, we explained about the Semaul Undong for up to 1 hour in great detail. And then they thought that this was the right model at a time of economic crisis in Sri Lanka. So then the Prime Minister also said that perhaps this can be a nationwide project to be undertaken. And also the Speaker of the Parliament was also very positive about this. So we see that the Sri Lankan government had strong commitment to continue with the project, as we were able to confirm last year. So afterwards, after the delegation came to Korea, so this was in December 2022, so we were able to confirm the commitment among the politicians to continue with the Semaul Undong. And then now, later on, the high-level delegates of Sri Lanka came to the foundation to receive training and also came up with an action plan. And this is the day after, so there was the training until December 26th, and then also they met with 3 parliamentarian members, including the deputy speaker. And then also they requested scaling up Semaul project in Sri Lanka, and so we spent more time trying to help understand better the Semaul project. And then also the deputy speaker, so when there were also students visiting Sri Lanka, then he also invited the students to the parliament, and since then we have been maintaining very good cooperation. And then now afterwards, so this is the continuous background on how we were able to continue with the Semaul Undong project. So because we did not have the legal basis to conduct the project, we also signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Home Affairs. So in Sri Lanka, when a foreign capital organization is to undertake projects, then they need to receive the approval from the cabinet. So now under the ERD, there is a department overseeing the foreign capital project. So from them, we also received advice that it would be better for us to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Home Affairs. So then, with the Department of National Planning, and then the Department of Foreign Capital under the Ministry of Finance, and then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Attorney General's Department, then to the Cabinet meeting. So we went through the entire process to receive the approval for this project, and then in the end, the President signed on the document giving approval for this. So now then we were able to have the basis for Semaul projects. Now as a result, we can also import duty-free vehicles. We also have been issued ID for a foreign organization. So we are now also receiving some benefits from the Sri Lankan government as a foreign organization. So we can see that this is the level of their appreciation of the Semaul Undong. So after the training of the high-level officials and also before signing the MOU, I also visited the Ministry of Home Affairs to have a meeting with the Vice Minister. And then he told me that there is a new project to be undertaken in Sri Lanka. And then I told him that we are from Semaul Undong Foundation. And then he tells me that the New Village, New Country program will be undertaken from 2023, 2025 nationwide, and he mentioned that the Semaul Undong Foundation was requested to help. So then a temporary organization was established to undertake this program. So again, now this is from the Ministry of Home Affairs. So this is the letter from the Ministry of Home Affairs about request for cooperation on this new program. So if you could wrap up, please. Yes, yes, I will. Okay. Okay, so then following that, in May, we received the cabinet approval. Then we signed an MOU, and once again, the governor visited Sri Lanka, and together with the Prime Minister, we signed the MOU. He also met with the Speaker of the Parliament. And what came about at this time was that they would disseminate Semaul project across the country and also provide Semaul training to 10 members of the Sri Lanka Parliament. This is going to be taken in the first half of next year, and to carry out cultural and digital Semaul Undong projects. And then now we also had the metropolitanized Semaul demonstration village development, and we also signed the MOU with we signed the ROD with the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs. And then now if we are to undertake the demonstration projects, then it is going to be for 3 villages, and then also inside the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, and there are also female officers, and then also the Women's Alliance in Sri Lanka is also very well established. So through them, we would also be undertaking income generating projects. And then also the national transformation projects are also being led. So in the past, now we would go to each village, but then now we would be working together with the Sri Lanka Institute of Development Administration. So for example, the 40 central government officials as well as 40 local government officials and 140 local residents have received training under the Institute of Development Administration in Sri Lanka. So then the Prime Minister serves as the Minister of Home Affairs, and then there are 3 sub-ministries. But then now, when we signed the MOU, then we also signed it with the Ministry of Home Affairs, and then also under the Ministry of Home Affairs, the New Village, New Country program is also being undertaken. So then for the Semaul Undong, then we also talked to the Prime Minister about how we need to coordinate among the different programs and also coordinate among the different ministries. So we are currently discussing the change in the competent department in the foundation. And then also for us to scale this out nationwide, then there are some budgetary shortages. So then together with the Gyeongsangbuk-do, the Gyeongbuk province, now we are going to link this with the seasonal worker program. So we are currently considering linking with the seasonal worker program under the Gyeongbuk province to continue with the Semaul Undong in Sri Lanka, and also through media PR campaigns, we are also trying to communicate more about the project. And this is something that started this year as a demonstration. And now there are about 7,000 workers from Sri Lanka going to Korea. So under the Ministry of Labor, there is the Industrial Human Resource Corporation, and they also provide training to the Sri Lankan workers coming to Korea. So working together with them, we are also introducing Semaul project to these workers who are scheduled to visit Korea. So if it works out well, then we are also going to regularize this starting next year. Future plans. We will try to provide high-ranking officials at relevant ministries with training on the Semaul project implementation framework. So we see that for the Sri Lankan government, they do have the commitment for this, so they also have the department in the ministries. But then perhaps it is not as strong as in the early days, and also there has been a change in the government, and also the members in the government change. So through such changes, then there can also be change in the commitment. So I believe that it is important for us to provide this kind of training to high-ranking officials to continue with the momentum. And then also there is the question of the competent ministry inside Sri Lanka, and also we are trying to link with the Gyeongbuk province's seasonal worker program to communicate more about the Semaul Undong. And then also for Sri Lanka, then for the foundation, the Semaul Undong Foundation, they now if we are also to have the cooperation with the Gyeongbuk province, linking with the seasonal worker program, then the Sri Lankan government has mentioned that we can be the intermediary in this program. So as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to provide regular training programs for workers sent to Korea in cooperation with the Ministry of Labor and Foreign Employment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now I forgot to introduce the speaker. So that was Mr. Choi Sung-woo from the Semaul Foundation, Sri Lanka office. And now we have to move on to the discussion, right? So we have to rearrange the stage.
토론자 발표자 안 나오시죠?
So let us invite the speakers and discussants. We need to end at 4:15, but it's already 4:07. So it's 4:07 already. So we only have 8 minutes left. But we would need more time. I think we started about 15 minutes late. So let's go right into our discussants. Please jump to your questions. So you have traveled afar to join us here. So let me introduce our discussants to you.
토론자는
So here are our discussants. We have Professor Lee Jung-ju of Yeongnam University, Professor Nam Soo-yeon of Seonggyeol University, and Professor Chung Sang-hee of Kaemyeong University. First, Professor Lee Jung-ju. Good afternoon. I am Lee Jung-ju of Yeongnam University. I feel like I need to really hurry. Thank you to the three presenters. Thank you for all your great work in conducting the Semaul projects in the local sites. Before I ask questions, I would like to share my thoughts with you very briefly. As you're well aware, the international community thinks very highly of the results of the Semaul Undong, and they want us to share our experience. It's good news, and it's great to have demand for our knowledge and experience, but I feel a grave responsibility. Semaul Undong are policies and plans to develop the local areas, so it's not just a campaign or a movement. Semaul Undong is different from other rural development programs. This is because the main initiators of these projects include the government and the residents. So the government supports and the residents lead. So we need to make sure that the voluntary participation of the residents is present for the successful projects. So the residents, in order for them to voluntarily and passionately participate in 새마을운동 projects, we need to provide motivation. So this question goes to all three speakers. In particular, for Myanmar, how are you able to motivate the participation of the local residents? This question goes to Director Moon. For the Myanmar project, Yeongnam University participated in your projects, and our students also participated, and it was a learning experience for our students. Director Moon was a great leader, and therefore one of the students that participated in this project actually joined KOICA from this experience. And so these projects can change people's lives, and so these projects are that important. All three presented the results of their projects. Well, the doctor needs to make an accurate diagnosis in order for the prescription and treatment to be accurate. And so in order to accurately assess projects, we need to have accurate standards so that we can create feasible plans for the future based on past results. In the case of Yeongnam University, we actually teach 새마을운동 to 80 countries. Tomorrow, our president will present the keynote presentation, and he is the man who created an academic study out of 새마을운동. And that is why at our university, we research and teach 새마을운동 very systematically. And we also work with CJ and KOICA to conduct a project in Vietnam. What we agreed upon with CJ was that President Choi Jae-chul had presented 9 success points for 새마을운동 based on his academic studies, and we wanted all 9 principles to become the standard and criteria for success. So those 9 criteria became the criteria for success. And so if we have clear standards for success, then we can have clear evaluations, which will then lead to improvements. In 2021, Korea became a part of the advanced countries according to UNCTAD, and in 2024, we will increase our ODA budget by 43.2% next year compared to this year, which is an enormous increase. And therefore, we need to make global contributions on par with our status. The efforts that we are making currently, we hope, will lead to actual results through cooperation. Thank you very much.
Good comment. 남수연 성결되겠습니다.
Thank you. And now, Professor Nam Suyeon from Seongkyul University. Yes, hello. I am Nam Suyeon from Seongkyul University. And yes, as Professor Lee has mentioned, now regarding the 3 presentations, I have also learned a great deal. So I would like to thank the 3 presenters for the presentations and also the very good models of 새마을운동. And also we have such a big turnout today to learn from the 새마을운동 models. So I find that also very encouraging. So far we have talked a great deal about the success factors, the good part. Then now as a researcher, what I have listened and also the questions that I have always had in researching 새마을운동, I'll just like to share with you some of my questions and also raise some questions to the speakers. Now in the school, then when we discuss 새마을운동 in Korea, then now in terms of the international development cooperation, then we talk a lot about localizing 새마을운동 and also how to update 새마을운동 to better fit today. In terms of the localization, so because each country has different cultural and institutional backgrounds, so each country would have its own model of 새마을운동. So now we see that in Myanmar, there was a very successful localization of 새마을운동, and also Mr. Moon talked about how he could actually see the village leaders transform. So then in terms of the success factors, I believe that one of the important factor, as he mentioned, was localization. And also in the last page, he emphasized the importance of localization. So then for Myanmar, I wonder how the customization or the localization was done in Myanmar. So if you could elaborate a bit further. So that is my first question. And then now the second question that I have always been thinking about, and that is about updating the 새마을운동. So now, of course, all three speakers, they all talked about how the central government, in other words, how they are being, let's say, converged into the central government. And so that is because it was the central government that played the instrumental role in pushing forward with this 새마을운동. So I would say that that was to be done. But then now, as a researcher, now in terms of the development paradigm in Korea in the 1960s, 70s, then yes, the central government, the state, would lead the economic development. So that was the development paradigm at the time. So that was also the established development paradigm in Korea. And then since then, the neoliberalization and then globalization, and also more recently, the deglobalization. So we see that the development paradigm continues to change. Then now for the updating of the 새마을운동. So some talked about how we can combine digital technology or cultural content to 새마을운동. So there were talks about scaling up the content. But then now, perhaps there have been little discussion about how we can update this to fit the paradigm of today. Because in the 1960s and 70s, the development paradigm of the time then, and then now if we are to export this or apply the development model then to the developing countries today, so that they will also be able to develop and grow. So of course I understand the intent, but then not only that, but not only the stage of development, but then also the paradigm of development. So I believe that we also have to think more about the globally changing paradigm of development. So then the 60s and the 70s, the development paradigm where the state played a very important role. So yes, that was true at the time. But then also, so I believe that 새마을운동 has that element, and it also has some neoliberal elements as well, and that is about competition element between the villages. So to have this competitive element to be awarded incentives and so forth. So we have this state-led model element and also the neoliberal element and also the villagers leading the development as well. So I would say that these elements are actually quite contrasting to each other, but then inside the 새마을운동 we see these apparently contrasting elements all incorporated together, so which is quite interesting to see. But then now moving beyond the neoliberal elements, and now in terms of the regional development paradigm these days, then about how they can also have the regions leading the way and also having more innovative elements. In other words, social innovation is also a big important topic these days. So perhaps then, of course, that's through this 새마을운동, having competition has been successful as well. But then now, perhaps having more communication. So not just about competition between villages, but also to have cooperation between the villages. So now we talk about co-opetition. So then why don't we also have co-opetition locally to be better in line with the paradigm of the day. And then now the last thought that I have had was about the political aspect. So now in this community development area, I would say that the least researched area is the political aspect as well as the environmental aspect. And then now of them, I wanted to focus a bit more on the political aspect. So then for the 새마을운동, I believe that we could also be influenced quite a lot by politics. So then I thought about where we could apply some of these political interpretations. So as you can see from the Sri Lankan case, now a nation's political situation, and likewise for Myanmar, but anyway, so due to the political situation of the country, the momentum of the Semaurundong or the trend of the Semaurundong could also change. So the political stability of the country is very important because it is also quite influential on the Semaurundong as well. And also I talked about the cooperation among the different villages, but yes, so the different villages are designated as demonstration villages, which then they would receive resources. So I believe that there could be some competition among the villages to be designated as the pilot villages. So even before the Semaurundong begins. So then the competition among the villages, in other words, the political relations between the villages, I believe that they are also worthy of further research. Then also last but not least, so locally, there could also be political relations between the different organizations that are engaged in Semaurundong. So when I say political relations, it's not just about the government or the state engaging in different relations, but then also there is the Semaul Foundation as well as the Semaurundong Center. So they went in together into Laos to be engaged in the project. So then in the course of this, now as the villages compete against each other, perhaps also the Korean organizations going in the same country, same region, and then of course I would think that there is underlying cooperation, but also there could be perhaps, let's say, what do I call it, perhaps lack of communication between them or even competition between them. So then that was the last observation that I wanted to make in terms of the political element to the Semaurundong in the local situation. And now I would like to raise my question to Mr. Chung.
You talked about two Semaul organizations, and I would like to know the relationship between the two organizations. Thank you very much. Well, I know that you have traveled so far to be here, but you only have 5 minutes. I'm sorry, but we have the following session waiting for us. So we have with us Professor Chung Sang-hee, who came from just around the corner. Yes, we don't have a lot of time left, so let me keep it short. So through the 3 presentations, I have been able to see once again the great results of the Semaul movement. In particular, as Director Moon has mentioned, cooperation with the corporate sector can be upgraded in the future, and that is what I could see for the future of Semaurundong. So I could see the potential for collaboration. And concerning the Sri Lanka project, I have a few questions concerning Sri Lanka.
So you mentioned the National Transformation Project. Then, in terms of the demonstration villages, so then if they change to National Transformation Project, then what were the differences in terms of the support, if any? And also what I noticed was about the seasonal worker program and also cooperation with the Ministry of Labor of Sri Lanka and also about the workers being sent from Sri Lanka to Korea. And also the 300K project announced by the Ministry of Education. Then it talks about the foreign students. In the past, they just talked about attracting and educating the foreign workers, but now they are focusing more on helping with their settlement in Korea to also have them contribute to the Korean economy as well. So then all these projects, so I believe that they can also be interlinked with the Ministry of Education's program as well. Then I wonder whether there are any plans to also cooperate with the Ministry of Education's program as well. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for being brief.
남시장부터 문시장님부터.
Then let me ask Mr. Moon to respond first, and we can go in the order of the presentation. All right, thank you. So thank you very much for the discussion. Now, first about the motivation for the villagers. And yes, I would say that this is the most important aspect for Semaurundong. And I would say that the path to that. In other words, as the professor has also mentioned, I believe that that is actually found in the success factors of Semaurundong. What I mean by this is that now in the beginning, now when we designate the villages, then it's not the villages in the administrative sense, but then it's more of the natural village. In other words, we would designate the village, the natural village for Semaurundong, so that the village can get together as a community and address some of the long-held needs of the villages, for which they can also contribute on their own. So I believe that that is what motivated the villagers to be engaged. Then also the competition among the villages to provide differentiated support. Now for this, I could see that now for the villagers, they also feel a sense of pride in that they are leading villages. So it's not about getting like 10,000 more, 20,000 more, but the fact that they are the leading village, that they are a self-sufficient village. So that sense of pride was also highly motivational. So I believe that the competition and also the differential support, that also was one factor of motivation. And another discussant asked about localization in Myanmar. Well, in terms of localization, now of course the Semaurundong, when we look at the Semaurundong in Korea in 1960s, then we have also tried some programs from the US aid, and also there have been quite a number of top-down approaches nationwide around that time. But then we have witnessed how each and every one of them would fail. So then those lessons have then led to the Semaurundong in 1970s. So for the Semaurundong in Myanmar, the priority, the utmost priority was localization. And that is why the training was not done in Korea, but was done locally. So by the facilitators there. So Mr. Chung sitting next to me, he served as the trainer of the trainers, and then so he would train the trainers, and then the trainers would then provide the training to the local residents. So, and also in terms of the implementation as well, it was not the Korean organizations going there to implement the project, but then it was the villagers themselves who led the implementation. So I would say that that was because the Semaurundong was. So that is what Semaurundong was about in Korea, and we were faithful to such principles of Semaurundong in localizing this for the Myanmar situation as well. All right, thank you. So then, yes, I believe that Mr. Chung could provide more explanation since he was there as well.
네, 저는 그
Well, Professor Nam asked a question about the relationship between the Semaul Undong Center and the Semaul Foundation in Laos. Well, as you are well aware, when we go to a developing country, they say, I don't know how many Semauls are there because there are so many different Semaul organizations on site. So this is actually the issue of Semaul ODA. This is an issue for which we need to find a solution for in the very near future. At the Korean Embassy in Laos, along with KOICA, brings together all Korean organizations related to rural development in Laos to gather to provide coordination and also to exchange information. But this actually is not a formal structure, and the expats in Laos actually has limitations in how much authority that they have. And so it's very difficult to do collaboration through the embassy. So rather, I do believe that the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, which is in charge of 새마을 운동, should be the one who plays the coordination role. And I also believe that the Committee for International Development under the Prime Minister's office could also be a possible coordinating body for effectively responding to the coordination between different 새마을 organizations. So we need a control tower in Korea for 새마을 운동. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Che.
네, 아까
All right, now then, I was not able to mention this because of the lack of time, but then now about the National Transformation Project, how this was being undertaken. Now for the demonstration villages, now for the metropolitanized villages, then let's say in what we would do in one village, now in this case, it would be done in 3 villages. So usually in year 1, it would be training and education, and also to make improvement in the living condition, we would build a village. They would build the village building, like the town hall. But then, in most cases, now they have the town halls. Then, now for the National Transformation Project, then because the town halls are already there, then using the similar budget, they would allocate this to other tasks. And then also, let's say for the pepper, they also had the pepper cultivation project, and then for this, then there would be support provided. So then there are some differences in the roles in the metropolitanized villages. Now for the National Transformation Program, now this is going to start next year, so we would have to then discuss further how the role can be divided. And then now regarding the linkage with the seasonal worker program, now it has not started yet, but then now it is going to start soon. So it is currently a big topic, and now usually for this there is an intermediary private sector. But then now if we can play that role, then there can be greater transparency, and also because we have an office in Sri Lanka, perhaps we could play a more effective role. And for this kind of seasonal worker program, then the local municipalities then then they can also sign an MOU between the receiving region and Sri Lanka about how we can provide support for the 새마을 운동 there. And then for the EPS program, then for this year, now between the sending region and also the EPS center in Korea, so we were first invited by them to provide the introduction to 새마을 운동, but then the response has been very good, and that is why they kept inviting us, and then now it has become almost regularized. And now, so far we have been just providing introduction, but if we can receive more time, then we would provide more education. All right, thank you very much.
되는데 뭘
Well, to the speakers and discussants, we would like to give you more time since you have traveled afar to join us. I have much to say, but I will not add anything more because of the time constraint. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Although the time was not sufficient, we definitely were able to learn a lot about the core of this issue. Thank you very much to our moderator, the speakers, and panelists. Another big round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Before we go on to the next session, we will take a short break. We will resume at 4:45 for the last session of the day. We will see you at 4:45. Thank you.